Welcome! This is what's happening on the Sun today, 16th of April 2011. We have quite a lot to talk about today. We've had an M flare and a couple of really nice coronal mass ejections. So let's see which regions have been causing all the trouble. Region 1186 is rotating off the west limb. 1190 has been showing some growth and has been the origin of the big flare. 1193 has also been producing some of the minor C flares. 1191 seems fairly stable, and region 1194 is approaching the west limb. We have a small spot forming at a high latitude in the northern hemisphere, which isn't numbered as yet, and from the coronal movies we can see there's a major region coming over the southeast limb. In the last 5 days we've had 34 C flares and 1 M flare. It's been a little difficult keeping track of all the C flares, but I think we've had another 9 in the last 24 hours. The M flare, as I mentioned before, is from region 1190, and in the meantime we've had a couple of mid-level C flares as well. Turning to the Stereo A spacecraft to see what has been happening in the regions that recently rotated off the disk, we can see to the east of the image the activity in region 1190, but there's also some fairly major activity going on the far side of the Sun. I discovered what was causing the gaps in this SDO data for the last couple of days. They have been doing a series of calibration runs for the EVE instrument on board, which involve off-points and spacecraft rolls, but I think now normal service has been resumed. In the Sunspot and Magnetic movies, we're looking for the development in region 1190 and 1193. In the Helium 304 movie, we see a filament start to lift off in the northwest, which I think is the origin of the CME that we see from the SOHO data. In the coronal movie, watch the southeast limb where you can see this new region begin to appear above the horizon. From the Stereo B data, we see that there's activity in the trailing part of the region that is just about to come visible to us over the southeast limb. From our whole Sun coronal image, we can see that we've begun to lose several of our larger regions in the northern hemisphere. But in about a week's time we're going to be getting some fairly substantial regions back again, and as I've mentioned before, there is a region coming over the southeast limb. One of the things I'd like to point out to you here is the complete imbalance between the activity in the northern hemisphere of the Sun, where we have several fairly large regions, and the southern hemisphere, where we have lots of little small regions that are very transitory. This balance is not usual, and I expect at some time that the southern hemisphere is going to start looking more like the north, in which case we should have significantly more activity than we do now. In the SOHO coronagraph data we can see a beautiful coronal mass ejection occurring above the northwest limb. The auroral zone seems very inactive, and the KP index has been varying between 0 and 2, which is very quiet. So in summary then, the sunspot number has dropped to 124, the X-ray background has dropped a little to B4, the radio sun has brightened to 129 solar flux units, and the KP index is rated as quiet. So my forecast for tomorrow will be very similar to the ones I've made the last couple of days. Namely, there's a very good chance of C flares. Now that we've had one M flare, there's a fair chance that we may get another. I still think there's a fairly low probability of getting an X flare unless there's major growth in one or more areas. The CME we saw today was rated by NOAA as being potentially geoeffective, so we may get the outside possibility of a geomagnetic storm. That's it for today. Keep safe. Bye for now.